day of shipping was put on the table. And I am aware that a few years ago, Honorable Member, that because of Barbados' position in the east, a little bit more easterly in the island chain, a lot of the other islands, in terms of discussing the regional ferry system, felt Barbados would make the cost too high and would be prohibitive. In fact, I'm told the cost was astronomical in their minds.
Honourable Member, you're straying a little. What are your plans for transportation was the question.
The point is that the only way, because this whole thing is a transportation answer, you know.
But what are your plans?
To build it out.
Go ahead.
To certainly build out the berths and the jetties, to position Barbados as the most, not only the best place to do business in the region, but in the Caribbean. But the point is that if you don't have a representative advocating for you at these meetings, you will be taken advantage of. And Barbados was taken advantage of. And that is why I felt the attendance at the COTED meeting is so significant in terms of any plan for transport. So you cannot have Barbados discussing regional transport and being absent from the COTED meeting. So that we went from a position of saying that Barbados's inclusion in the conversation became too expensive. And what we are saying now is that Barbados has to be the most important point in any conversation in regional transportation. And that is the point that we made at the recent COTED meeting. So it is extremely related and extremely important, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Member, any supplementary? Honourable Member for St. Lucie, are you done?
I'm finished.
Thank you. Honourable Member for the City.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is directed at the port that is located in the city of Bridgetown. I have been looking through all of the documents, and I really commend the board and management at the port for the enhanced security measures that are being undertaken to keep us all as safe as possible within this country. But there's one area that I'm not seeing any reference to whatsoever. I'm looking through the ministry's brief as you speak to achievements and other things within that brief. And I hope that one day that I would be able to see, certainly in next year's brief, something in relation to the other aspect of security, which is port health. And I'm not seeing anything where port health is reflected in your documents. I'm not sure if any funds are being allocated to port health. And I consider port health to be extremely vital. And at this point in time, as we try to expand and encourage more people to come here to do business, to set up medical universities and so forth, I think the issue of port health has to factor in at a higher level within the deliberations of the ministry. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be said in that regard.
Member, I agree with you entirely. You would know that between my ministry through the port and your staff at the hospital, they have been having meetings to discuss this issue. You've also be aware that I'll let the chairman speak specifically to what we're doing in relation to the port health issue, but you're also aware that we had collaborations around how we were going to dispose of garbage leaving the port and so on in terms of the incinerator and our need to work together to be able to, because it really is a health issue, in order to be able to incinerate the garbage coming off the ships and so on. But I also know that you had expressed some concern about the facilities that were made available and the need for us to work closer together and to elevate in the thinking and the security on the port the issues pertaining to health. And I believe what the chairman has to say will be satisfactory to you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Yes, we have a couple of things that are taking place with regard to port health. In the first instance, there was a facility, I believe, which you had the opportunity to have a look at, and it was found to be inadequate. The expectation that workers from the Ministry of Health would function in accommodation that was in that state was unacceptable. And so the port has undertaken in this financial year, as we have developed our new budget, to develop new facilities and to upgrade that which has already been agreed to. And I believe that the plans have been developed and sent over to the Ministry of Health for approval and for input so that to finalize them. In terms of incineration of ship's waste, as you know, this is a requirement that we have to meet under the MARPOL conventions as a waste receptacle facility for ship's waste. And what we have done just recently, I think 2 weeks ago, in conversations with the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, particularly as it relates to cruise vessels, we made a request to them at the time initially to have instances where there are ships which have onboard incineration facilities for them to take their waste, incinerate the waste on board the ships, and then Barbados would receive only the ash, which would then reduce our capacity, particularly in our landfills, and it would have to meet the necessary grade requirements coming in from the Environmental Health Department, and that has been something that is being worked on in a protocol with the Ministry of Health, the Sanitation Service Authority, the Environmental Protection Department, and the team from the Bridgetown Port.
Yeah, Madam Chair, another question. I was fairly general in my questioning because of the nature of the whole question of port health or anything to do with security. So I really wasn't intending to go into any details, but I'm just trying to stir the imagination of those who, so that you would certainly reflect the fact that this is a vital part of the operations at the port and should not be seen as a stepchild, so to speak, but needs to be at the forefront. Thank you.
Agreed, and it is one of the mission critical issues for the port.
Honourable members, please note that we have 15 minutes left. So I would suggest that the 7 members who wish to speak either make it brief or not at all. The next person in line is the Honourable Member for St. James North.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I want to join in congratulating the Honourable Minister for. Want to join in congratulating the Honourable Minister for the work he and his team have done so far. My question relates to Western Fish Market. Of course, my constituents have asked me to ask this too, and I thank you, Honourable Member, for coming with me to Western with your team. I think it was in September, October last year. And you know, we know, of course, that fishing is a major employment and economic activity in that part of my constituency, and just wondering where in the pecking order would be, you know, the required repairs for Western Fish Market. You know, it's not only, of course, an economic activity, but it is also a part of the culture of that part of St. James.
Thank you, Honourable Member. You and I had visited Weston, and I actually returned with you for a meeting in Weston, and I'm very aware of the issues in Weston, and I know how committed you are to resolving the issues that affect the fisher folk at Weston, and so you're aware the drawings that we had needed some. When we revisited the market, there were some issues pertaining to the drawings that we wanted to go back and revise and to get new drawings for Weston. There were two issues at Weston. There are two buildings similar to what is happening at Concept Bay. There is the main building, which is the building used for the market, and then there was a building that was built to be used by the staff. And a lot of the interest that was raised in the newspaper really pertained to the building for the staff and their quarters, and for the fisher folk really, their quarters and so on. So there are two buildings in the drawings. I hadn't forgotten. So we're now seeking to get the drawings because we needed to refresh the drawings. There were a lot of changes that we wanted to implement. As the Honourable Member spoke about renewable energy, I feel that has to be built into everything that we do. So we've basically taken the decision to almost not withdraw the whole place, but approach it in a new way. We had taken to Weston, we'd taken two persons who would have been in the business of building out in terms of construction. We got some quotations, initial quotations for the initial work, which would require significant capital investment. But because we then decided to rethink the approach to Western and to have a market, again, that is fit for purpose. My dream for the whole market, to be honest with you, Honourable Member, is that all of them should have a similarity in the sense that all should have a similar style or a similar approach to being able to dispense fish. The conditions that each of them must be of such quality that they meet Barbadian standards, but that they also meet international standards, while of course reflecting the cultural and the uniqueness of their positions across across Barbados. So Western is on the cards. I've spoken indeed to the port in relation to their corporate social responsibility to see if they could help us with Western. I'm pretty sure the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest is going to come up with a similar question, but we spoke to the port in relation to assisting with that, but other persons as well. The reality is, and I think in this case, the angst really has to be directed at the source. In the last 10 years, you could put every single market in a bag and pick one and find that it is truly in a deplorable state. And you could pick any. And the reality is that this, to me, is the greatest indictment on the last administration, that they treated people so, that they treated Barbadians so, and that I know that we intend to fix all the markets. We have limited resources. We are also going through an IMF program. We can't deny it. We do not have the kinds of resources that we would like to have. But even though we don't have the resources, we found enough money to be able to do 2 markets almost immediately. We're working on Spice Zone in the short term, and we're going to be working out. I give you the highest assurance that Western is a priority for the ministry, but that Western is going to require significant financial resources. And I hope to be in a position to report to the Honourable Member that will be soon. What I could say, though, Honourable Member, is that while I may not be able to bring the market up to standard immediately, I am surely in a position to be able to do something about the quarters for the fisher folk. And that is the one that seems to have caused the greatest disturbance in that particular market. So that one will receive immediate attention, but the market in and of itself will take a little bit longer.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
And through you, I want to ask this question on behalf of our colleague from St. Philip South. The question is that the fisher folk at both Foul Bay and Gully Road races were able to buy diesel from the port, and for some unknown reason, they were then asked to purchase this from the Bridgetown market. As a consequence, they are now paying 30% more for the said diesel, and they're trying to find out what was the reason for. Okay, so the fisher folk from Foul Bay and Gully Road in Rices in St. Philip South, they were able to purchase diesel from the port, but are now being asked to purchase it from the Bridgetown market area. As a consequence of this, they are now paying 30% more under the new arrangement. And they have written to the relevant market representatives and the port, but have not been able to get any answers to their queries. And they're now trying to find out what is the status of their queries, and can you shed any light on the reason for the change?
Thank you, Honourable Member. The issue with diesel has many component parts. As you are aware, when we came into office, there was, and this has to be said, we removed the road taxes. But the government of Barbados did not replace the road tax with the fuel tax, but there was a creation of a fuel tax. I can't remember the proper name for it. But we started charging a tax on fuel, including diesel, which meant that the diesel prices would have gone up. The fishermen have engaged me on several occasions about reducing the price of the diesel with the argument that they never used the road and therefore shouldn't have to pay a replacement tax for a road tax. And I've gone through great pains to explain that it is not a replacement tax for the road tax, but it is a tax on fuel. And that all of us who use the fuel will have to somehow have a relationship with the tax. What we have been recently discussing, and I have raised it with the Prime Minister, and they're asking is, could we perhaps lower the amount of taxes that they pay? And maybe not. We are in the middle of an IMF program, and that has consequences. And I have asked them to understand that all of us now must carry a bit more of the burden, because the fact is that Barbados is in a position that is highly precarious, and that if we try to do too much too soon, we would dislocate a very delicate balance, and we don't wish to do that. The other issue, as it related to the diesel, what happened, there was a conversation that we had with the suppliers in the port on the diesel, and I remember asking for us to figure out, because there were 3 rates for the diesel when we first came in. There was the rate that you and I would pay at the pump. There was a lower rate than that being paid in the markets, and then there was an even lower rate being paid in the port. The person, I think it was Saul, who was the supplier in the port, who then subsequently said that they had in fact made an error, and that the rate that was being paid in the port was actually lower than it should have been. And therefore, because we started asking questions, in a way, it meant that Saul then sought to readjust the price that was being paid. It is my understanding, and I would hate to think that I've been misled, that no fisherman is being banned from accessing the port. It has never been that way, but the truth is, because there's no change in price now, there's no need to go into the port. What we have to do is to make sure that the renewable energy platform for Barbados becomes the way forward. Diesel is expensive for the fishermen. Diesel is expensive for the country. These fossil fuels are expensive in the long run, and we have to get to a point where we're no longer doing that. The other issue is that, we have also to retool a lot of our fishermen to be able to better utilize the diesel now, because, like, for example, none of us in this room, I believe, go driving the way we used to drive. The unfortunate reality for fishermen is, because we're chasing fish and they have to go further and further and spend more and spend more. I believe all this is integrated. If we're able to have fish closer to Barbados, and I believe the marine managed areas will help, then perhaps they don't have to go as far. If we're able to get newer boats through some of these same financing instruments that I discussed earlier, then it wouldn't cost so much. But it's going to be a long-term solution. If it is indeed that there are other issues that have to be ironed out, by next week I will have a meeting with the port. The chairman is there. I know she would meet the CEO and the Fisher Folk Association to iron out any other problems. But the bigger challenge has been for me that they've been asking for a reduction in the diesel, which Barbados at present is unable to grant because we can't afford it.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first congratulate the Minister and his team on a good job so far. I know that the Minister and his ministry right now is paying attention to the Pearl Bay fish market. Unlike the last representative, former Minister of Finance, that more focused on JADA and work hard and giving away duty-free concessions, instead of paying attention to the people and the condition.
What's the question, Honourable Member?
I'm getting to the point now.
I don't want to rush you, but be tight for time.
Of that fish market, which have deteriorated over the years. But I want to know what opportunities, because you had mentioned earlier about opportunities for young people, and I just want to know what opportunities can be embraced by aspiring entrepreneurs who may have a desire in operating within the fish markets as a fish vendor, one, and how easy it is to operate as a fish vendor within the fish markets. And my second question relates to the projects that are in the pipeline within the port, and what...
Honourable Member, you covered your one question. Please allow the minister to answer.
Well, thank you very much for recognizing that we are actually doing some work at Pile Bay. We've done extensive drawings there, and through the port, we will be actually doing some work there, again, as part of their corporate social responsibility, and we will engage with people in that area very, very soon. As for what is necessary to be a fish vendor, I think might have been how easy it is to be a fish vendor and the possibilities there to operate in the markets. Look, the markets, in many ways, are oversubscribed. Our markets are very, very small. There's hardly any space in a lot of the markets now to accommodate people. It tells me, and a lot of people are being drawn again to the profession. I think the necessity of it all. People are looking for ways to generate revenue again. And a lot of people are turning to the fish markets. As it stands now, if there is space, and Miss Holder, who's here and acting as manager of the Bridgetown Market, would tell you that the spaces, they're very limited. We really don't have space at present. But I would like to see the expansion of the market. Now, does that necessarily mean that everybody has to be able to operate in that space? Not necessarily. It means we have to think about new ways to allow people to be able to have access to the markets or to be able to play their trade. The one thing that we have to be cognizant of, though, through this whole process, Honourable Member, is that we cannot compromise the standards in which people are allowed to handle fish. And fish is very tricky, and that there has to be some supervision at all stages in the value chain, in the supply chain, to make sure that the fish is not contaminated. And I have been very insistent that all those standards are followed. In fact, I have been very insistent that we elevate the standards. Now, I would like to bring more people into the markets and allow more people to be able to make a living, but that would mean that we find a way whereby if you're not operating in that physical space, you're operating under the same standards that everybody else who's in the industry must operate under. And I would like to be able to do so.
Thank you very much. Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
To the Honourable Minister and his team for the comprehensive approach that they've used. And my only question is, what robust plans are being put in place in relation to the banning of
your mic, not Minister. Just pull down your mic.
What measures are being put in place? Robust advertising and interaction with people in the communities, especially in our educational institutions, where we're seeing some bins and so being put in 1 or 2 schools. But the overall approach, you got to have a jingle, you have to have town hall meetings and so, because Barbadians are hard to break away from habits. And as a little girl, we had something like paper to wrap our bread in and so on, put food and so in brown bags. We're not seeing that anymore, and the fast food people are going to be impacted upon households, neighborhoods. So I just want to hear what funds are in place and what activities are going to take place, because we are all ready as parliamentarians and community workers to work with others to be able to move our people away from the culture that we can preserve our environment in a really special way.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honourable Member. As you know, we announced in September last year that there was going to be a ban on single-use plastics in Barbados. We announced it in September last year. The Prime Minister actually gave a speech where she referred to it in the middle of September. We posted it on social media, it was in the newspapers, and so on. The reality is that before we even made the announcement, we were having meetings with persons who make a living in the sector. The persons who import the single-use plastics and persons who import styrofoam. And we were also having conversations with the manufacturers of a lot of the plastic bags. Now, Honourable Member, you may recall that it was the intention of the government to ban single-use plastics in Barbados on January 1st, 2019. During the course of the consultations with the persons who are involved in the industry, it became clear to us that January 1st might be too soon. In fact, the persons who import the single-use plastics and persons who import the styrofoam made it clear to us that they would need at least 6 months to be able to get rid of their existing stock. So in September, when we wanted to do the ban in January, to give them 6 months took us to April. That is the reason we moved the ban from January 1st to April 1st, to give people time to get rid of their existing stock. Now, obviously, some persons still haven't gotten rid of their existing stock. And then there were some people who haven't heard about a ban being imminent, chose to bring in more stock in the hope that they could supply it after the ban, assuming that they would be allowed to not import but sell. The ban on April 1st is on importation and on the retail of single-use plastics in Barbados. You won't be allowed to sell it. So there's some persons who may have extra stock, and I hope that they're able to get rid of it between now and then. But we had extensive conversations. And I'm coming to your question now, but I feel this is important. The persons who manufacture plastic bags told us that even January 1st, again, was the date we had in mind. And we extended it at first until April 1st. But they said even that is too soon, and that for them to be able to retrofit their factories, they needed more time. And so we extended, as you know, the ban on single-use plastics is not on single-use petrol-based single-use plastic bags on April 1st. In fact, that is January 1st, 2020. So they have been given an additional 9 months, so a whole year, to get themselves in a state of readiness. That would mean either using a different resin to make the bag, or finding there's people now who are suggesting that they have a chemical that is an additive that makes bags that begin petrol-based to be biodegradable or also biodegradable, that it returns to some natural state. The science is unclear on it. I am unclear on it. To me, and as it stands in the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, it has to be a bag that is not a petrol-based bag to be used in Barbados, so they have to use a different resin, but they said to give them some time. I've also been having conversations with the Honorable Minister of Commerce, you want to talk to him? Who is looking at ways to be able to help them through this transition period, because none of us in the government is keen to see people lose jobs. But these are the things that we have been doing, and of course the Honorable Member for St. George South, the Honorable Minister of Small Business, has been part of that conversation as we try to figure out how can we take Barbados where it needs to go as a value-driven country while taking care of the people. And that has been perhaps the most difficult part of that, because it's a hurtful thing to know that people may be dislocated, but I also see tremendous opportunities. Now, as for the marketing of it, you will soon be hearing our jingle. I would sing it for you if I could sing, but you will soon be hearing our jingle on the radio. You'll be seeing you'll be seeing all the ads on television. We've already started engaging the schools. We've written to the schools. The Honorable the Senator and Chairman of the Port has reminded me that very recently I launched the Model United Nations Fellows, where we had a lot of persons who gathered from across Barbados at the UN House to discuss innovative ways to address this issue. These were secondary school students to discuss innovative ways of looking at the single use. We've been having conversations with the jet ski men, the people who are on the ships, the vendors, everybody, and you will see that being part of a very grassroots, innovative kind of PR program that we're going to be rolling out from this week. The reality is, again,
30 seconds.
The reality is that cost was an issue for us, and so we chose to be timely in the way we did the marketing, but we believe we will be very effective in that. Before April 1st, everybody in Barbados will be aware of the ban, but I'm comfortable enough to say that those persons who are intimately involved in the industry already know of the ban because of the conversation. And the persons who supply food on the streets and so on, when we have the conversation with them, they just want to know that there is a proper alternative that they can use. And for every single item that we've banned, there is an alternative that will be allowed in Barbados.
Thank you. Final question from the Honourable Member for St. George South. Final question, I reiterate question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and indeed it will be a final question, even though the Honourable Minister promised me a C, but I'm not going there this afternoon. This question is on behalf of the member for St. Joseph, who's presently away on business, and he asks if there are any plans in the estimates for the upgrade to Tent Bay. That facility, he recognized, has become a dumping ground for stoves and several other debris. And indeed, once you see dumping of stoves, you know it becomes a health threat, a threat to human health. So while he's listening and he's watching you, you can give him the answers to what plans you have for Tent Bay in your estimate.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member, and the Honorable Attorney General, who I'm glad to hear is watching, can rest assured that like all the other markets, eventually we will get to some work at Tent Bay. Tent Bay is one of those markets, I mean, you have to see these things to believe what I am saying to you. That the clearest manifestation of the lack of care of the last government has to be in the markets. There is not a single market that hasn't fallen into absolute disrepair in the last 10 years. I'm informed that at Tent Bay we do not have a lot of staff because of the state of Tent Bay market. And I would love to be able to say that we would be able to go to Tent Bay and to make Tent Bay, to bring Tent Bay to a state of readiness in this year's estimates. That may not necessarily be the case, but it is also in the plans. Look, I believe that the fishing industry is so critical to Barbados. I believe that we have to get the fishermen to a point where they could not only have the best boats in the region, but that they're in a position to be able to catch fish. I think we have to relook the diesel situation as well so that fishermen have affordable diesel. I'm also advised that a part of the reason was that I was told by the Chief Fisheries Officer that a decision was recently made that in the port they may no longer be able to give diesel to the fishermen because they're only supposed to be given to international ships. So this is a conversation that is unfolding and one that I will have to have. But that for me, very quickly, people must be at the center of everything that we do.
I'll give you your wrap-up, Honorable Member.
So this is
if
it?
you just get to the question, you have time for a wrap-up.
Okay. So to answer the question, we will take care of Tent Bay. But that the truth is, Tent Bay, like all the other markets, need a lot of love.
Thank you. We have reached the end of this session. I'm going to allow the Minister 2 minutes to wrap up for his final comments, and then ask you to move the head.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to the honourable members for all of the questions. Thanks to the opposition leader for his questions and for his constant association of himself with myself. I hope it says that, I really do hope that it says a man will be coming home. But nonetheless, the situation as it stands, Madam Chair, is that as I've gone through pains in this conversation to explain that I have inherited a situation that is really in need of some urgent and intimate attention. And persons have asked, what is the Ministry of Blue Economy and why the Ministry of Blue Economy and why do we have these ministries? The reality is that nothing was done in the last 10 years. We are not inheriting a situation that is normal. And if we were to try to assign these massive ministries to people, then perhaps even with the best of intention, we would not be able to rectify some of these things. And that I feel that by separating the ministries, we've been able to pay close and detailed attention to a lot of issues that have been left unattended for a number of years because of the size of the ministry, and frankly because I feel people in the last administration just did not care. And that is why I feel that we have to rectify some of the existing situations, but that we have to go further. I feel as if the issue of people must remain the driving force behind everything we do. I'm reminded by the chairman that we have a supply logistic chain that we must look at every step along the way. How can we bring people into this relationship so that ordinary people could live in Barbados? How do I get the fishing industry to again be a shining example of light for Barbados and for the rest of the world, and to be innovative? I feel as if I should be doing new things with sarcasm. I feel as if we should be given the opportunity to try things and to fail, but that in the process of experimentation to come up with new things, because that's the only way we're going to be able to get it right. I feel as if the government has to be given a fair shot at it all, and that above all, I do not feel that anybody in this room anybody at all in this room should be judged by the standards of the last administration, which really were the pits of any other test of any other administration, that we really have to be given the opportunity to serve in the interest of the people of Barbados in all of our ministries, and that certainly in the ministry responsible for maritime affairs and blue economy, you will see a transformation very soon in the lives of ordinary people, but specifically the people who play their living in this sector. Thank you very much. I want to say a very special thanks to all of my team who are here, all who represent the various departments. I don't know if you would allow me one more second to name them all, but I feel as if I must. I want to thank Senator Lisa Cummins and David Jean-Marie from the port. I want to thank from Coastal Zone Management Unit, Dr. Leo Brewster, the director, Mr. Antonio Rowe, the deputy, and Mr. Ricardo Arthur, who's in charge of the project. I want to thank from Markets, Melanie Holder, from Fisheries, the Chief, Mr. Stephen Willoughby, and the Deputy Chief, Ms. Joyce Leslie, and of course, from the Ministry, Ms. Jacqueline Blackman, who's next to me, my acting PS, and the Head of Shipping, and a lot to contribute to the development of Barbados, Ms. Angela Nelson, the Senior Admin Officer, and of course, my Senior Accountant, who's amazing, Ms. Tamisha Jones. I want to thank you very much for your time, Madam Chair. Oh. Madam Chair, I beg that head 46 stand part.
Question is that head 46 in the amount of 15,361,772 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. Thank you, Virtual.
Next, that's just switching over. Just about an hour and 15 minutes.
lot of people running to the back.
Head 82, Ministry of Environment and National Beautification, in the amount of $35,716,875.
Honorable member.
Madam Chair, I beg that you grant me the opportunity to invite my members of staff of the ministry to be part of this space in this honorable chamber.
Granted.
At this moment.
Granted.
And to speak. I will never attempt, Madam Chair, to monopolize the moment in history on this occasion. I trust everybody is ready. Madam Chair, I first want to alleviate any fears of the members of the staff of the ministry who had their reservations that in these special chambers we have here, that this would be tantamount to standing in the box and facing interrogation. But after speaking to them for a considerable time, they became comfortable and are willing to at least share their experiences and to speak of the goals and objectives of the Ministry of the Environment and National Beautification. Madam Chair, I know that there are some who believe that in these chambers contributions should not be political. I don't know what that means. The reality is that I am a politician, ministers are politicians, and I do not have the fears that any perception on the politics of the future development, the present or future development of Barbados is something that I should see or fear. Madam Chair, I also believe that the genesis of my presentation should be honored by expressing my gratitude not only to the political dispensation to which I belong, but to the collective wisdom of the individuals who serve within the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. It is this collective, this configuration from the ministry that will help us to achieve the goal. And as we look at the limited finance that is made available to us, obviously comparative to 2018 to 2019, over $35 million, we know that we have to operate and execute the program within the corners of those constraints. Madam Chair, when I came to this ministry, I came into a very toxic environment. And you must bear with me. I was of the opinion, and although everyone might not agree with me, I was of the opinion that we were in an environment of dysfunctionalism where many members in the ministry were not given the opportunity to give expression to the high level of talent, not only collectively that you witness here today, but the qualitative nature of the personnel within the Ministry of the Environment. And this exhibition of talent which you are going to witness today, Madam Chair, is because I believe that I have a responsibility, like all other ministries, that I am not envious of, like the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education. I want people to understand that the Ministry of the Environment and National Beautification stand on equal status with any other ministry. In the presentations I've heard people laid before this House significant achievements that could not occur without the wisdom of the Ministry of the Environment. The Ministry of the Environment has a philosophical perspective where the adhesive that is responsible for bringing many successes across the various ministries, the genesis of those successes really originated within the Ministry of the Environment itself. The Ministry of the Environment, Madam Chair, worked with the Ministry of Energy in the execution of responsibilities for the South Coast project. Some of the most able and enlightened officers who are qualified in areas related to natural sciences, biodiversity, persons who are engaged in the testing of water quality in the ocean and locally service water. Persons who are qualified in understanding the importance of testing water pollution, air pollution, that deal with issues related to the Zone 1 challenges that this country is facing in a limestone geology. Many of the issues in relation to the Graham Hall project, this ministry has been involved in. Many of the issues in relation to Harrison Cave, we have been involved in those important public events. And I'm not going to let anyone snatch the credibility from this ministry, because I understand a straightforward maxim: no man likes to live a life knowing he's not wanted or not recognized. And in order for me to give credit to these officers who I know work assiduously, and to make sure that Barbados continue on a developmental path, not just by using language, but it is in the testimony that I give and in the work, I would not feel comfortable to know I took up this ministry, which was experiencing the disintegration of the entire body and I work in order to reintegrate the staff into the mainstream of policy decisions, and that I don't say to all of them. I am extremely grateful for the work done by the officers in the Ministry of the Environment and National Beautification. I also want to make this point, Madam Chair, because on Sunday, Madam Chair, we almost had a national disaster. 4 acres of land on the landfill, which was in the cell 1 on the landfill, tires below the surface and tires above. Caught fire, at around after 6 or so, I received a call. And when I rushed to the fire there, the members of the staff of the SSA, the members of the staff, and I want to thank them too, although they're not in my ministry, the Defense Force. Many private contractors, C.O. Williams, Jose, and many others. But the officers of the ministry took it on themselves to make sure they monitor and give directions on the best method